Hi, in one of the previous episodes I've showed you how we can abuse stateless widget. This time let's have a look how we can abuse a stateful widget, or more specifically the setState method. I've prepared a very little project over here which has a stateful widget as my app. I've just modified the main app, added a state to it, copied and slightly modified the contents as well. And down here we have my widget, which is a stateless widget, and all it does is it's printing the hello world and also a counter which is coming to it as a argument, constructor argument over here. The counter itself is a mutable state that lives here in the my app state. And we increment it on top over here inside of a setState on top on the inkwell which contains the my widget. So if I keep clicking over here, you can see that the counter is being incremented on the text. Now this thing works because setState, if we have a look inside of this method over here, somewhere at the end, there we go, calls the mark needs build method on the element, which is what we did last time with the stateful widget, so that it would re-render a mutable state inside that lives inside of a stateless widget. This setState method, if you have a look, it's annotated over here as protected. The problem is that in Dart we don't have access modifier in classes, so we actually don't have protected, private, public and so on. Therefore this annotation, it will be respected by a linter which will notify us that something is wrong, but we can still use it outside of the context where it should be used. Usually protected in languages means that this method over here, setState, it would be available to the class that defines it. In our case right now it's state, and also it would be accessible to the classes that are extending this class, so in our case the state. Here we have the my app state which is extending state, and thus it has access to the setState method which is protected. However, as I mentioned, in Dart we don't have actually a protected modifier, so even though it's annotated as protected, we can still use it somewhere else. And now let me show you how to do it. I have prepared over here a column. Let's create a button, maybe here, a custom widget. Now this custom widget, let's just create here a stateless widget called button. And let's say it instead of a container, it has a text. Then this text will have some click me text in it. Save that. And let's wrap it also maybe with inkwell. So we will have an access to on top. Perfect. Now a stateless widget has a build function, which is giving us access to build context. In case you didn't know, build context is actually an element. Build context itself is just an abstract class or an interface. You can see that the documentation of build context is exactly that over here. So build context objects are actually element objects. The build context interface is used to discourage direct manipulation of the element objects. So build context restricts us from using some of the other methods from element, if we would have just an element instead of a build context over here. Build context only gives us a subset of methods that element actually has. However, build contexts give us access to find ancestor state of type. Let's give it a type, which was my app state. Let's save it to a variable. And now what we can do is we can call setState on it. And of course this can be null, but in our case it's never null, so let's just use the exclamation mark. And in here let's call state counter. Let's set it to 12. And notice that we don't have any errors already. And if we restart the app, the compiler didn't complain whatsoever. There is a couple of very sinister things happening in these 3 lines, just these 3 lines over here. So first of all, we are calling the setState on state from outside the context where the protected setState should be called. And you can see that the interpreter right now already gives me, or the linter already gives me a message notifying me that I'm doing something bad. That the member setState can only be used within some instance members of subclasses of something else, which definitely isn't a stateless widget because stateless widget doesn't have state. Secondly, you can see that I'm calling our underscore counter, so a counter that is supposed to be private. But again, in Dart we don't have real access modifiers, and if you haven't known that before, then a counter or whatever that has an underscore, it's only private to the file or to the package in which it exists. In other words, for example, we can call the counter here as well, and that will work perfectly. Let me show you that it actually works. So if we tap on the hello world, we are incrementing each time by 1. Now let's have a look in the code over here. So we have the counter, it started with 1, and then we have this setState on top when we tap on my widget, and my widget is the thing that renders the hello world and counter. So of course, every time this setState is run, then we increment the counter and then we re-render all of it. So the whole state here, the whole tree together with my widget. However, if I click me right now, look what happened. We go back to 12. Which means that this little thing here allows us to tamper with the state of a stateful widget, which is somewhere up in the tree. I'm by no means saying that you should ever use it. In case you need to do something similar, then you should either use the inherited widget, provider, riverpod, or anything else instead of this kind of a solution, because this is more of abusing the API over here and the insufficiencies of the Dart language. I hope you liked it. Bye bye.